I have an invited guest, as we did earlier on, Nancy O'Malley, and I want to welcome you, Nancy.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm glad, thank you. I'm also glad and look forward to hearing Marvin speak also. So I wanted to give you a couple of updates of some of the projects that we've been working on for the last couple of years. The first one that I'm really, really proud of is, and some of you may have seen this in the news, but we just recently issued a gun report of guns in Alameda County. This is a critical report from my perspective because we really looked at every single gun sale, gun purchase, gun stolen, gun lost, and guns used in crime since 2012 here in Alameda County. The data in here is very valuable, and there's a couple of points that I really want to make. At the beginning of this, I have my reflections about why it's so important for us to address how guns are coming into our state and into Alameda County, what's wrong with our data systems so that it doesn't help us to make these determinations. Because if we don't know what's happening, if we don't have data and good data, then we can't solve the problem. And as you know as well as I, not only mass shootings, which is horrible and horrific to America, but also we here in Alameda County had a mass shooting several years back where the man with mental health issues went into a school and killed 7 people, his classmates, and then injured a lot more. So for him, he died in prison, but for him, his mental health, his mental illness, whatever drove him to get guns and to go and shoot people that he was going to school with was inexplainable. But for those people who suffered the loss of a loved one, or those that are still alive, that are living with the memory of the injuries that they sustained, for our community, for law enforcement, the first ones on the scene trying to save people, some not successfully. So guns, I know you agree with me, that guns are just plaguing our society, and we have to do something more than just people that are doing background checks. That helps, of course, but what we know, and I've looked at every mass shooting for the last, since Columbine, that's over 25 years ago. You look at who's doing the shooting, what is motivating people, what's driving people, and it isn't always that they got guns for the mass shooters. It's not always that they got guns without getting a background check. Most of them had guns legally owned by either them or someone in their household. And so there's a lot that we're working on right now with the governor's office. As you probably know, Governor Newsom has been very strong about gun violence and addressing gun violence. His initiative that he sponsored a couple of years back, Proposition 63, which put a background check on buying ammunition, was passed and just went into effect this last July. And I was very honored to be able to write the response to the rebuttal from the NRA to say why this was not a good initiative, and I was able to talk about why this was vital to our safe community. So I'll tell you a couple of the things that we learned in our gun evaluation. One of the things is that for children who die by gunfire, 89% of it is unintentional, meaning that they did not pick up a gun and nobody picked up a gun to shoot a child. That more often it's a child getting their hands on a gun that's not secured or locked up, and they killed themselves. Just last week, we had a 3-year-old who got her hands on an AK-47 that was on the table, and her little body reached up and got that gun and shot the arm off of a 10-year-old who was visiting the house. And I could tell you so many stories that are not dissimilar to that. So with children, part of our effort has been, for everybody, but part of our efforts around protecting our children from gun violence is we do billboard campaigns, we go and talk at schools, we talk to parents. We're now reaching out to pediatricians who do wellness checks with babies and young kids, and ask the pediatricians, ask the parent, do you have a gun in your house? And if you do, is it secure? We did some PSAs this summer where it was, what I wrote was one woman asking the question about, hey, can Jimmy come over and play at your house? And the other mom says, sure, yeah, he can come, but does he have any food allergies? The other mom no food allergies, but I hate to ask this, I'm kind of uncomfortable, but do you have any guns in your house? And the other mom says, well, we do have a gun, but it's locked up, and no, the children can never get to it. And then I come on and remind people that where we ask about food allergies, we ask about, do you have a swimming pool with a fence around it? Do you have biting dogs? But we're uncomfortable to say, oh, by the way, do you have a gun? And if you have a gun, is it secure? So these are the efforts that we've been doing for a long time. So we know that guns are hurting our children. Since 2005, 68%, there has been a 68% increase in guns being stolen. And this is in the state. And in 2016 alone, 237,000 guns were stolen in California. And in our county, it was 2,556. So what we're saying is that people that are lawful gun owners, if they aren't securing their guns and their house are being broken into, or their cars are being broken into, those guns are ending up on the streets of our cities, of our state. We know guns are coming from Nevada and from Arizona. And as you saw recently, that the legislature sent a letter to the governor of Nevada who basically threw in the garbage and said, I don't care what you guys think in California, but we're going to know, how are those guns getting here? How do we stop the trafficking of guns? But we know that there's so many guns in Alameda County that are reported lost or stolen. And those lost or stolen guns, we cannot tell you, I can't tell you in all the research we've done, how many of those lost or stolen guns were actually used in a crime. And the reason I can't tell you that, which we've uncovered, is that the Department of Justice for California, as well as the state, the federal government, that alcohol, tobacco, firearms, their databases override when you put an entry, a gun stolen. Then the gun is recovered, having been used in a crime, and they put it in, it overrides the gun was stolen. So all we know, or the gun was recovered. So all we can tell you is how many guns were recovered, not how many guns were stolen and then recovered, having been used in a crime. But we looked at all of 2018 of the guns that were used in crime in Alameda County that we know about, because there are a lot more guns there. The police didn't solve the crime, they didn't find the gun, a lot of reasons why. But out of the 800, and I'm going to get the exact number, 862, I believe, guns used in crimes in Alameda County in 2018, more than half of those guns were not registered to anybody in California. So we know we have a gun trafficking issue in California. Of the other 400, that they weren't the person who committed the crime, or at least we allege they committed the crime, was not the registered owner. Only 7% of the people who we filed charges against for a gun-related crime were the actual registered owner. So for our next steps now is to work with the state and to work with the federal government to fix the database so that we can actually get good data that will help guide us to drive good policy. When we drive good policy, we're going to be able to drive resources to support the policy enforcement. Right now in California, there's a bill that's moving its way to the governor's office. We already have right now a law that says if a family member feels like somebody is having mental health issues and they have access to a gun, that they can contact the police and the police can get a restraining order from a judge and take the guns away for safekeeping. And for some, they have periods of depression or periods of bouts, and maybe they need their medication changed, whatever. So it's not permanently you can't have a gun. It's getting them away from them during that critical time. But the truth is, in mass shootings, what we know is that most of those individuals are not mentally ill. It's not their mental health that's driving them to do mass shootings. The majority of them, as we've looked at all of them, is more they're mad at somebody or they're looking for attention, like the guy in Las Vegas who killed 58 people. And so we're very focused on gun violence. It is one of our highest priorities to reduce or to do something substantial to reduce gun violence or guns getting in the hands of the wrong people in our county and keeping our county safe from gun violence. Another, so what I've passed around gives you this. We have copies of this, but we also have it online. So we don't want to be wasteful or environmentalists. So we print enough copies to let people know what it looks like. and then we tell you how you can access it online. And I think when you read it, if you read it, that you're going to find it to be very, very interesting. And the last part of it tells about the different initiatives that we've done. For instance, we did these are just an example of our billboards. That if you drive up and down 880, you're going to see our billboards. It basically says, save a life and lock up your gun. I was in Houston a couple months ago, and I was driving from the airport to downtown, and I saw one of our posters, one of our billboards, and I almost drove off the road. Like, where's my camera? Let me get a picture. But
Wow.
we offer it to anybody in the country that wants to fight gun violence and educate people about safe gun storage. Not trying to take away or undo the Second Amendment, just trying to get people to be safe and responsible. The other thing we did was we took, instead of destroying guns, gun parts that are used in crime, which is what we do periodically, we hire a registered gun person who takes them all away and used to incinerate them. But again, we're environmentalists, so I want to put that in the air. And so this time we hired a registered gun owner who broke them into parts. We did a call to action to local artists. One couple was from here in Castro Valley, who were selected out of the people that submitted their plan. And so they came and got to pick out of all the gun parts, and they made art out of it. So this is actually a bicycle that's made out of gun parts. The handlebars, or the handles, are 2 automatic weapons. The seat is 100 bullets. We have this one, which was this Gunnosaurus, this DNA, which was our big prize. It's about this tall. But we want people to see that there is the ability. We're not destined to have gun violence in our society. Our DNA is not destined to have gun violence. And so we have the ability to change that paradigm by really giving focus to it. So I invite any of you to read this, and if you want a real copy, a hard copy, then we're happy to provide it as well. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is a project that we've been working on for 2 years. It actually started with my evaluation of what was happening with people who were placed on probation, felony probation in Alameda County. And it's not under the current chief's regime. Our current chief probation officer is very innovative, very energetic, very, very good. But we had a lull in the effectiveness of probation. So what we discovered was that for more than, the first year I looked at it, over 30% of people that were placed on felony probation, which is supposed to help them rehabilitate, over 30% committed a new crime in the first year. So their life, that things did not change very dramatically for them. In the second year, it went over 40%, and the third year was 52%. So we called out that failure. We owned that failure. We could not blame them for not changing their life, and we had to own it. And so with that, I created a program that we were selected by the state for social impact or pay for success bond. So we got some money from the state. We got several foundations that invested in our program, our new plan, which is now being evaluated by an independent, nationally recognized evaluator, because this is we're one of 7 in the country, and we're the only prosecutor office in the whole country to have received this pay for success. What that means is we presented a plan, an alternative to traditional probation. We're being evaluated to see if the way we're doing business and our plan will change and improve the outcomes for those who are involved. We get investors who invest in it, just like an investor on, investing in a business. And we're very prescribed, and everything is done through our evaluator. At the end, if we meet our milestones, if we hit the goals that we set for ourselves, then we pay back our investor, because they're investing, they're paying us to achieve success. And when we do, which I'm confident we will, given what we know so far, then we pay them back all the money, which I'm fine with. I'd be happy to pay them back once we hit the milestones and show there's a different way we can interact with people who've been caught up in the criminal justice system. So what happens is that everybody who has a felony conviction that is arrested and charged with a new crime, all those names go to our evaluators, and they do a random selection of who goes into our program. It's called the Justice Restoration Project, and who goes through the traditional track of probation. So far, we have 150 people, 160 people now in the program, and they will be followed for And they'll be having services for the first 18 months, and then they're followed for an additional year to see if, we don't want temporary help. We want people to have the ability to change their life. In the state and in some parts of our county, the recidivism rate for people on felony probation can be as high as 60%. With our program now, that is the control group, the people that didn't get into the program but are doing the traditional, they're hovering around 50% recidivism. With the control group, it's about 20%. Now, on the sheet, I've given you also, we have podcasts now. We want people in the community to know what we do. And our second podcast is called Second Chances. And it interviews people who have been involved in the Justice Restoration Project and how it has impacted them and what it's doing to help them have a different future than what they have been doing. We're very, very proud of it. When they go to our program, there's a lot about family reunification, because for some people that have been involved in crime, their family has done with them or doesn't know how to interact with them, and so there's a lack of family unity support. They don't have necessarily skills. They've got a record. There's a lot of barriers that exist for people, and they have mental health issues and they have substance abuse issues. It's a very difficult path, but there's a lot of support in our program that we believe that when this program is over and we issue our national report, that this will motivate probation offices or probation departments or other departments that supervise individuals who have been justice involved that look at it differently, to see the human being and look at what they need and not just what we think they should have. And so I invite you to listen to the podcast, because it's quite remarkable listening to some of the participants talk about their experience and what it's done. And for us, it's our way of being able to help people that can't get out of the cycle of criminal justice involvement. And it's really our goal at the end, because in this county, we have a goal of, by 2026, of having a crime-free county. This is part of the real strategic plan. Now, of course, the first time I said it, I had to chuckle a little bit, like, yeah, really? But I have to tell you, then I did my own deep dive about what can we do? What can we do? And I think in this 10X mode that I am positive that with all of us working together and providing the resources, addressing some of these, that we are going to get closer and closer and closer to reducing crime, to being close to a crime-free county. And I hope that for all of us.
What's the podcast?
It's on the bottom of the sheet, so you can go to Spotify. I've actually put the links on there too.
Okay.
You can go to Spotify, which I'm telling you, I don't even know what that is. But, yeah.
I have a quick question. So this is amazing, hearing about this Alameda County Justice Restoration Project. Is it primarily about jobs or working? Because I know that the DSAL's doing a great work.
They are.
It's more about recreation and diversion and family, because people also need that.
Right.
Because I guess when people are bored, they commit crimes too and fall back into habits.
Well, I think it's maybe some boredom, nothing to do, but I think also that there isn't a strong support system for when people do get a low in their life. And so what the program is that we work with La Familia, who are primarily located in Hayward. And so there's an assessment. If they need substance abuse intervention, that's provided. If they need mental health intervention, that's provided. It's job training. We help them with getting on their feet financially. And I think one of the big factors has been reuniting them with their families. And we kind of healing through restorative justice processes, healing the wounds and the history of them with their families, so that they do have a social network that's not the old neighborhood or not the crowd that they got into trouble with, but a social network that's here to support them and help them be successful. And you're right, DSAL does great work. The Justice Restoration Project really is focused on individuals who have already been convicted of felony and have continued being involved in crime, because we want to break that cycle for them, and that's what this so far, knock on wood. I'm very confident that we will have positive outcomes. And that can help educate us and guide us in how we interact with people the first time we see them in the justice system. And we don't want people to become comfortable or familiar with the justice system. We want them to get out and work and things like that.
I'm involved with a parolee, a felon parolee. And I went for the first time he had to go to the parole office. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat.
You want water?
And so they allowed me to stay for the presentation to these people. I was sitting in the back. And I was very impressed with, there were probably more than a dozen people from different organizations that gave to these young men sitting here, how they could help them, and two of them had locations where they could live for a period of time. But the one thing that this is a retired school teacher in me, there was things they had to fill out and stuff, and my sense was that one of the problems, I was a special ed teacher, so I may be biased, but I felt like maybe half of those guys could not read and write good enough to start through the system in all the paperwork. So I went back to the people at the door, and I said, you know, I don't think a lot of these young men happen to be all men, could read or do the paperwork, and I would suggest that you contact the Retired Teachers Association. I think there's a lot of teachers that would be glad to, pair up or help someone like that, doing nothing but maybe filling out their forms and all. They weren't very interested in my suggestion, but I just wanted I want to tell you too, because I do believe.
Well, I'm all ears for that stuff. If there's somewhere that we can tap into to help people,
Right.
then we're gonna
That's what I felt
gently
like.
put the arm on them.
Yeah, and the first program was wonderful. I mean, they had everything, and if any of them wanted to get help, it was right there. And then afterwards, they could all go out and talk to these different people with these different things that they offer.
So you raise a very good point. And this is another reason why we know that from birth to adulthood, that everything is linked. So a lot of what we do is we now have incorporated the science of hope. And this is actually a real science, just like adverse childhood experiences. It can be measured to see how the trauma of the child is impacting their ability to learn or to grow healthy. And so now we can measure hope and hopelessness. So when I first started looking at hopelessness, it was about a new phenomenon, cause of death, called death by despair or death by hopelessness. Whoever heard of that? But it is now a recognized cause of death. So I thought if that can be a phenomenon, then what do we do to give people hope or help them find their hope? And a lot of that we're doing with children. So kindergarten, transitional kindergarten, all the way through high school is work with kids so that they have the support to stay in school. And little kids don't miss school because they don't want to go to school. I mean, they do not want to go to school, but most kids like school when they're that age. But it's because sometimes they have family issues where their parent can't get them to school, or their parents didn't themselves have schooling, so they don't appreciate the importance of school. There's so many reasons why. But when we keep kids in school and we keep them learning, and including during the summer, like Boys and Girls Clubs and those type of programs are great, because they keep kids engaged so they don't lose some of what they learned in the school year over the course of the summer. So they don't keep falling back, because what we do know is that at a certain grade, if kids are so behind, the social pressure, the embarrassment, I can never do this, the hopelessness that kids have, even at that young age, will be a barrier to them being able to stay in school and get the education that they need to be able to go on to jobs. And some will go to college, some could go into the trades, some are going to do whatever. There's a lot of things. And so we focus from cradle to grave, really. and we want kids to stay in school, and we work really hard with them, and all the way through high school, where we have, each year we add a different program. And so that you just really put put the pin on the point, because there's a lot of issues that people have in their primary families, in their neighborhoods, and we're working very hard. So I just say that with Supervisor Miley, we've been working on illegal dumping, which seems like a little tiny thing, but if you ever drive through East Oakland, oh my gosh, it's a disgrace the way people treat, and I don't mean the residents, I mean people come in and dump their garbage like this is the town dump. And that has to have an impact on the psyche of those people that live there, that we're so unworthy that people can just dump their garbage in our neighborhood or in our yard or whatever. So with Supervisor Miley, we've been working really hard to do a lot of addressing that illegal dumping. And part of that is, again, is just helping people find pride in their neighborhood and their hope that their neighborhood is going to be safe, and hope that their neighborhood is going to be a healthy place to raise their children. And, again, we've sort of incorporated, maybe me, but the people in my office know about this, but I live it, about how do we, every step is how can we help people find that hope. And hope isn't just, oh, I wish it was better. Hope is, where do I want to be? What do I have to do to get there? Who's going to support me? And who's going to be there when I stumble? Because we all stumble. Who's going to be there to help us get through it? That's one of the things about DSAL, and I'm glad you brought that up. Because DSAL helps people that don't even realize they have skill. They don't even realize they have a place in our community, and they're growing vegetables, and they're the entrepreneurs of our county, of having fresh food, growing fresh food. Any place there's a plot of land in the county, they're putting vegetables in the ground and then selling them, and themselves teaching themselves things like good nutrition and other things. So, there's so many good programs that are going on. We're working so hard to try to get to that goal of a crime-free county. With our marijuana, when that law passed back in 2016, in November, we, the next day, ran every marijuana conviction case that we had. We had about 7,800 convictions, which is remarkable for a county this size, since we have a database which is since 1972. But that's because we stopped prosecuting marijuana a long time before the law changed. We had a lot of other alternatives for what happened to people with marijuana. But now we have our challenge is that the courts don't have the capacity to enter all the judgments, all the dismissals. So we've given them a list. I've got like 7,000 petitions that we have filed with them. They're going crazy, and we're saying that they're filed. You take the time you need, but get it going to dismiss all of those. So in no time, or whatever the court's timetable is, that all of the marijuana convictions will be gone from our records. And we think that's a good thing. And now we have a lot of businesses that are popping up. And frankly, the police and the former cops are all the security guys for the marijuana, for the legal marijuana retail establishments.
I was going to ask you about this, early marijuana. Are we seeing any uptick in crimes associated with that, or traffic accidents caused by marijuana? And is there any progress in coming up with a field test for a person that has too much marijuana?
Yep, so there's actually a study that's being run, year 2 of a 3-year study that the state is funding. And what they're trying to determine is if marijuana really does impair someone's driving. So for some people it may, and for other people it might not. So that's why we're doing a study. There's not a number, like with driving under the influence, if you're 0.08, you're presumed to be under the influence. But with marijuana, there really isn't. Now, we've prosecuted people that have been driving very impaired with prescription drugs, where they overtake the drugs or that they're not supposed to be driving, and they can be convicted because it's impaired driving. But with marijuana, it's tricky. Probably the biggest case that we've seen, well, there's a couple, but there was one when our controller, Betty Yee, who lives in our county, was going through the Alameda 2, being driven by her state driver, and a guy that was smoking it in the car and had been smoking all day, smashed into the back of her car. and then he backed up and tried to get around, he smashed it twice. So it pretty much destroyed the back of the car, really hurt her pretty severely.
Wow.
And he got out of the car, and the smoke was billowing out as he got out. And he was saying, I've been smoking all day. All we could prove was that he had a car accident. And so we don't know, we're really trying to figure out if there is an impairment component to it. It's tricky. But I will tell you that we've had several DUI, driving under the influence, cases where alcohol has been involved and marijuana. And they've resulted in deaths. And in 2017, between Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, there were like 9 people killed by a drunk driver, including the CHP officer here in Hayward, who was killed on Christmas Eve. And the guy who hit him was loaded on marijuana, had been drinking, and had some pills, and he hit the officer's car, which was on the side of the road at 100 miles an hour. And he had driven from Tracy like that.
Wow.
So we know that it contributes something, but in and of itself, there's not good evidence yet, and I'm not sure there ever will be.
Bob, I'm going to call on you. I'm sure you can shed some light on some of this.
I actually have a question for Nancy, and she's covered part of it. A friend of mine, Roland Freeberg, I served at Spectrum Community Services Board of Directors for years. He called me this weekend and said, "Hey, Bob, I got a friend who wants to know how he can have his marijuana conviction expunged." And I said, "Well, call the DA's office. I'm not exactly sure what the procedures are." Does he have to do something to contact the DA's office to get that in progress, or is it automatic?
Well, we're doing it automatically right now, but if he wants to get it done faster, then he can call us, and we'll pull his petition out of the pack of 7,000 and give it to the judge right then and there and have him sign it right then and there. Because what's happening is the court's just doing it as somebody has time.
Great.
I think, Nancy, that was a lot of the questions that when I talked to people who were coming, that seemed to be one of the priorities they wanted to know. Where are we now with the marijuana, with the changing laws and places, dispensaries are opening up and everything like that. So I'm glad that you brought it up and you covered it. So.
Can I say one thing? Sorry, John,
Yeah,
just
no.
one more thing
Yeah.
about that.
Sure.
The dispensaries are licensed, the product is tested by the state, it's packaged, everything is on the up and up. The problem we have is that the illegal sellers are still, they've grown. And frankly, some of it is cartel, that's here in this county. And so we still have a big crime issue, but it's not, it's only a misdemeanor crime. And so there's not very much teeth to anything. So we're looking at it in different ways. We look at it as unfair business practice, which seems kind of silly but if a legal business owner is paying in taxes, they're paying more for their product, and they have to charge more for their product, is unfairly disadvantaged as a business owner from the guy who's selling it on the street, having it grown in a field somewhere. So that's one way that we're trying to address the illegal market. Because the illegal market, you don't even know what they're getting. It is laced with pesticides, with toxins, with all sorts of stuff. So we really want to drive people to the legal market and the retailers. And so we're trying to figure out how we can use whatever authority we have to address those others.
Nancy, the Garden of Eden Medical Marijuana Dispensary, and we have Weir-Hampton, the unincorporated area.
Yep.
Both of those dispensaries have to spend time chasing away illegal dealers who are trying to catch their customers before they go in.
Yep.
Wow.
And the overtaxation by the state right now is a problem.
That's true.
And then the medical marijuana dispensaries that are legal, they cannot deduct for federal taxes the cost of doing business. I mean, the federal government's making a fortune in taxes
Right.
off these dispensaries.
Well, California, as you know, Bob, California is working very hard to figure out how we can do something around taxing and around money, because some banks, like if you go to Wells Fargo with your backpack full of marijuana smelling cash, they're not gonna take it. And so we're trying to figure out how we can keep, from my perspective, I want people to be safe. If they're walking around with a bag of cash, because it's primarily a cash business, then I want them to get in that bank or wherever they're able to, credit union, because a lot of the community banks are doing it, get in there safely, I don't want people being followed by the robbers and hurting them for a little bit of cash or a little bit of product. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Is there any
Thank
more,
you.
is there more questions you might have an answer before she closes the books here? Carol?
Immigration issues? Anything you want to tell us about that?
Sure, I'd love to. So, we're very proactive about helping people who have immigration issues. We can't go to immigration court with them, but where we put out, because people who are immigrants to the country are very vulnerable to being victims of crime. And that's one area where we have the ability to step in and help. Because if somebody is a victim of crime, we can help them get a visa as a victim or a witness. So for someone who's been trafficked, and this county, we have led the national fight against human trafficking. And we're seeing more and more foreign nationals being trafficked here in California, in our county, in different industries like illicit massage parlors. We can help them. And that means, and other victims of crime, and that means that they aren't afraid to come forward and get help. And so far, as long as the visa application is pending and we have prepared it, then they can stay here without being moved away. I also just hired a new woman on staff who's doing a lot of outreach and helping to educate the community. Because there are very few people that have not been a victim of crime of some sort. And her mother, you might have heard about her mother, is the nurse who worked at Highland, who had been here 20 plus years. And she raised her children here, and her husband was there, both working people, and they deported them, both of them. And so this young woman was finishing her last year of college at UC Santa Cruz, and she had to take care of her siblings. And she's now working with me at our Family Justice Center to help us be outreach to the immigrant community, because we know that in our county, 44, Eric Swallow talks about this, that in his region, which is mostly Alameda County, some Contra Costa, that 44% of the residents are not American born. So we have to make sure that we are protecting our immigrant community from the terrorism that happens when they're afraid that ICE or somebody's going to come and knock on their door or stop them while they're driving their kids to school or some draconian thing like that. I know the county has taken a very strong stance. Wilma Chan, Supervisor Chan, and all the supervisors have been very strong on that issue.
I read some time back, Nancy, where you were very proactive in prosecuting people for the human trafficking with the children and all like that. And I think you had rare reviews on you led the charge, if I remember correctly, on some of the literature that I read, which I think would be commendable on that.
Thank you.
That is just something that, as an immigrant myself, and when I see other people that are subject to some of the atrocities that they've been facing, it's terrible. My heart goes out to them, and I'm glad that somebody of your stature is taking a stand for them to see that they're not manipulated and misused, mistreated, or whatever.
Thank you. I promise I'm going to sit down after this last comment I'm going to make.
Okay, you're gonna get into
On the human trafficking issue, I started our specialized unit in 2009. We call it Heat Watch. Heat is human exploitation and trafficking. And since that time, we have prosecuted over 600 human trafficking cases involving children as victims. So when I go around and talk to communities and say, you think that human trafficking is not going to touch my community, it touches all of our communities. We have kids being trafficked at a Catholic school. We have kids being trafficked as young as 4th, 5th grade. And so we're very proud of the fact that we have done that. We're now have a big focus on the purchasers, because sex trafficking is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world, including the United States. And that it's funded by the purchasers. If there's not demand, then there's not going to be a market. So we're really trying to focus on those people who are on the streets or internet. But right now, just after, even though we've got 600 convictions, right now we have 60 cases pending involving children who have been sex trafficked in this county. And in the labor trafficking, we have a very big labor trafficking division that is working with people that are being exploited in the workplace or, in other places like that. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing for human trafficking. And it's a community issue. Police can't solve it, I can't solve it. All of us have to be part of that. Be aware, if we see something, call someone and tell them what you see, and just be proactive about it. Now I promise I'll stop talking, because I want Mark to have a chance.
That's okay, and let's give a hand to that.